Hi, this is to show how to make a flowchart procedure. So this type of procedure is a little different than the ones we've used, but this will actually make a very simplistic, easy to follow type of procedure that will also help me understand your understanding of what we're talking about. So in a previous one, we've used this polarity, what's called a decision tree. Think of decision tree and flowchart as interchangeable. So if the idea is that we want to determine is something polar or nonpolar, as these are our results, we need to think of questions to answer and kind of those answers to those questions in order to help us get to our answer. They can be simple, such as, am I hungry? Yes or no. They don't have to be what are called binary, though, as one answer or another. But the idea is that they're helping us to, if we get to a yes, now we ask a separate question. We ask something different, and that'll carry us forward. Such as this one, starting off with vacation, what to do, further decisions, and kind of outcomes. So these can also be a different way of making a decision tree in the sense that if I want to have this kind of outcome, well, I would need to go to Hungary, which means I'm going to Europe. The idea of that this is meant to give us a way of determining what something is through a series of steps, which is essentially what a procedure is. Here's another one that's kind of silly. This would actually probably be a bad example of how it can be confusing if you try to follow the arrows. I know they're trying to be a little cutesy, but it does make it a little hard to follow. However, you can still get an idea of there is the main question. What are some criteria or questions you want to answer? What are those answers in order to leading you all to the possibilities you might have in mind? So take a moment to look over these ones and kind of come up with a list of similarities and differences that you see based upon these, because I really want you to grasp that they may be a little different, but there's a lot of similarities that can be very helpful in making your own, as that's a part that you will do. So procedures tell us what to do. You've been following procedures in this class, and ever since you've done school, really. And on occasion, we've had you actually make some. Now, this is an example of one we did a little while back. It's very complicated. Again, the idea, it's meant to direct us to do actions. So you read it, you do it. You read it, you do it. We only think about how to carry out the action. Like, do I have to do it fast? Do I have to do it slow? What am I looking for? What do I expect to have happen? What kind of data am I recording? We don't think about what the result will be. So we don't think about, if I do this, will it result in something else? And now I need to make a different decision. You're just following one step after another. There's no change in actions based off new information. You get some data recorded, you don't change something else. There's no if this, then that. They will lead us to a conclusion, but much of that will need to be done in the process of the data itself. You go look at your data table, you make some conclusions, you may look at some ideas of what they are, and then you come back and go, okay, I believe it's this. A procedure can be conditional, though. This kind will be multi-directional, again, looking like a flowchart or a decision tree. As we get new data, we make a different choice of what we want to do. There's not just one way of doing it. I can always say there's a simpler way, meaning the fewest steps, and a more complex way, meaning the most steps. Easy and hard depends on who's doing the actions. You start with a question that can have multiple answers. Okay? These are the parts. List those possible answers. Develop criteria or questions or tests, because this all depends upon what you're actually doing, that will lead you to all possible answers. So here's our example. What food should we get for takeout? I don't know in your family, but in our family, this is such the challenge any day of the week. People are hungry, yet don't know what they want. People know what they want, and nobody else wants it. All these different things. I wish this could be as simple as following a flow chart or decision tree. General answers, again, I just chose some that I tend to have. Criteria, questions, tests, things that are important to make this decision. Is it a weekday or weekend? Sometimes that makes a big difference in our family. Is it hot or cold outside? A lot of people don't say they want hot soup in the middle of summer, or they don't want a salad in winter. Hey, everybody's got their own thing. What time of day is it? Is it night? Is it day? Is it lunch? Some people don't like having things for breakfast, whatever the case may be. Is it cheap? Is it expensive? These are all things that can make a difference on what kind of food we might want to get. Now, let's make a process of a flow chart. And again, there can be multiple directions. You don't have to have my first as your first. It doesn't have to be that way. As long as we all come to a conclusion of each of those based upon the criteria we have to test. So let's take a look. So, where to eat or what to eat, right? That's where we start. I would think of what day of the week is it? That kind of comes to my mind first. Because if it's a weekday, I'm probably at school. If it's a weekend, I'm not at school for sure. I think of next, how's the weather? And these two questions don't need to be the same, right? This one could be thinking about, what was one of the previous ones I looked at? What time of day it is. Because maybe in the weekday, or I should say maybe weekend, maybe what time of day it is, that matters a little more because I have more freedom on the weekends. So when I think of what's the weather, if I'm on the weekend and it's hot, I want a salad. Try to eat maybe a little better. I can be a little bit more open. And salads are actually a lot more work than what you actually think of them as. Cold weather, definite burger. Now on the other side, if it's cold, I might go Indian. Helps warm me up with that curry. Gives me kind of a warmer feeling during the weekday. I also might have a separate question that it's hot. What do I want to spend? If it's not expensive, Mexican. If it's expensive, it'll be Chinese. So again, I can make these determinations all separate. I didn't need to ask these series of questions. What I did need, though, is I needed questions, an original question, and my answers. These are the criteria, questions, or tests that I would use in order to get myself to those. So this is all based upon data that I would have. What I like eating, what matters to me, and of course the original question itself. So I want you to try a chemistry type on your own. Your question, what type of element is it? Your options, metal, nonmetal, metalloid, or man-made, meaning, not really any one of those three. Qualities of each, so I'm giving you some different qualities. You're going to come up with things that you would test about these in order to come to a determination. So you might look back at previous labs we've done recently, because those will be tied in with these types of ideas. Take a moment, pause the video, sketch one out, and then I'll show you what I came up with for me, which might be similar, the same, or very different than yours. So here's what I came up with. What's the element? Okay. Are there properties I can measure about it? Well, man-made things are not very large and abundant, so they're not easy to recognize and get things like masses and all these other things. So no, that's sectioned it off to man-made. That leaves me with three others, right? If it conducts electricity and the answer is no, you also see I don't have to have yes always on the left or no on the right. Just need to make sure that I'm clear. Conducts electricity? No, that would be a non-metal. Okay. If it's yes, it's a high conductor of heat. If that was true, then it'd be a metal. Metalloids tend to be medium in conductivity of heat. This is just an example, though, that it doesn't have to be super complex. It just needs to have our three parts. What's our main question, our answers, and our criteria we're trying to measure in order to get there. All right. Come in with any of your questions. I'll be happy to answer them and help you get better at making these your own. Take care.